If you're a Nebraska fan, it's another heartbreaker this morning. Matt Rhule and company go down swinging 10-13 on the road, a loss to Minnesota. Got to tell the truth today, though, all right? It feels a certain way. It also looks a certain way, but the answer is somewhere in the middle of as good as it looked and as bad as it felt. Let's tell the truth. Let's talk about what we saw from this game really quickly. Make sure you subscribe to the other YouTube channel. We talk college football and only college football. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram at JDPiquel. So here's the frustrating thing for Cornhusker fans this morning. What you saw yesterday in that loss and the final result, having it be one score, having it be in the final minutes, having it be in such a dramatic fashion, it feels the same as what you just got out of in the Scott Frost era. It feels the same because you saw killer penalties, especially in the red zone, drive enders. That's what it was. You had awful turnovers. You had 4 turnovers and 1 game ender, to be real. I mean, that interception, unfortunately, call a spade, that was what ultimately at the end of the game resulted in them getting a chance to kick that field goal. Familiar results, familiar feeling. And notice now, everybody was so quick to take to the Twitter sphere, get the Twitter fingers out, and make a lot of Scott Frost jokes. You saw a lot of that. That's low-hanging fruit. It's people just looking for a punchline. And it is what it is. It's our culture. It's punchline culture. You know, that's what you're going to get right now. But I think there's more to unpack here within that. I want to make sure, though, before we get into that, though, there are zero excuses being made from anybody in the Nebraska camp. Zero excuses. Having been around Matt Rhule for a very short period of time, they're taking this one on the chin. They're accepting all of it. They're looking at the bad as well as the good, and they're moving forward. But they're not making excuses. They're not saying, oh, well, the ref missed that call. Gabe Ervin was in, and that's a bad call on the penalty, and this should have gone our way, and it didn't. Like, he's not talking about that. He's saying we control. We take care of our business, and we move forward. Let's grade the tape. We got more games to play. Like, come on now. Let's keep it rolling. So what I want to make sure we talk about is feelings, the way last night felt, and the reality of what I saw from Nebraska, I think are different things. Because like I was talking about a second ago, it felt the same. It felt, oh man, Nebraska shoots themselves in the foot and they lose a close game. That was how it felt. That's familiar. The way it looked, though, I thought was different. We talked so much about Matt Rhule wanting to prioritize a physical brand of football. They held Minnesota to 55 yards rushing. Last year, Nebraska gave up almost 200 a game. Nebraska had more rushing yards than Minnesota did last night. They ran for 181 yards on the ground. They averaged 112 yards on the ground last season per game. That was good for 107th in the country. There are good things on tape to talk about. To quote Will Compton, there's good things on tape. You got to look at it, and you got to really evaluate it, and you got to be able to not let the final result blur your vision. And we're not saying it was all good. We're not saying that this is a Nebraska team that's going to go and rattle off 11 wins and compete for a Big Ten title. We're not saying that. I'm saying if you look at last night, the brand of football being played under Matt Rhule is a tremendous step in the right direction. The results are the results. If you're worried about results, you're probably not worried about the right things at this point in time under the Matt Rhule era. I think they're going to make a bowl game. I didn't think they were going to win last night. Okay, so when you're talking about this team as a whole, the eye test, I think, was very, very different. I saw a defense out there just absolutely battling, just going toe-to-toe. Your offense puts you in some tough positions. They turn it over 4 times. They're not getting points how they're supposed to, regardless of the positions. They kept on going out there, kept on making plays. The interception and man coverage from Omar Brown, that was big time. Like, they just continued to respond all game long. There was no quit. There was no, oh, woe is us. It was, all right, let's go. Next thing. Offense turns it over. We're back on the field. Let's go help our guys out. And so I think that in itself was extremely refreshing. And if you hold the opposition to 13 points, like if you told me going into this game, Minnesota scoring 13, you're taking Nebraska to win, I would have said 100%. 100% I'm taking Nebraska to win. Minnesota's only scoring 13. You should win a football game if the other team only scores 13 points. Now, to the exact same token, you can't turn the ball over 4 times, and that goes without saying. We all understand that. But to really have turned the ball over 3 times and have a chance to win the football game, Matt Rhule talked about it in his press conference. He's like, we hurt ourselves so much in that game. We had so many penalties. We had so many turnovers, and still, it took a good football team, a well-coached football team, regardless of the new pieces they're breaking in, a well-coached football team under P.J. Fleck, the last couple of minutes, the very last play, kick a walk-off field goal and to find a way to win that game against Nebraska in their first game of the Matt Rhule era. So you credit Minnesota, but you also look internally and say, okay, there's some good things to take away here. It hurts. You don't make excuses. But at the exact same time, you understand that this thing is taking the right step. And I was talking to our producer, Trey Andy, before this. Like, if Nebraska were to have the exact same box score, but have a different final score, I think we talk about this game in a different way. Hold them to under 100 yards rushing. Run the ball the way that you do. Let's say that Minnesota covers the spread. Let's say Minnesota wins the game by 8. Say, man, that's too bad. That's too bad for Nebraska. But hey, look at what they did well. You don't have this conversation around, well, they lost close. It's almost like Matt Rhule is being penalized for losing close. And I understand why. I mean, I'm not here to talk about the previous regime, but I'm just saying for Matt Rhule, we have to view this as a brand new operation under him. We can't keep counting the one-score losses and penalizing him because of what Nebraska was previously. What Nebraska was previously and what Matt Rhule is right now at Nebraska, I think very different operations, very different football teams, and good football teams play close football games. Like, it's just the reality. Especially in your first year during a rebuild, like, to be in close games, it's not something Nebraska fans are excited about, but at the exact same time, like, I think you have to kind of view this with some context. And I love so much what he talked about during his press conference, and this is something that he has always been about, something that he hammered home at Baylor, and something this team, I believe, is bought into. The staff is bought into for sure. Matt Rhule, one of his mantras is, what's next? It was written on T-shirts at Baylor. It was written on the walls, I believe. Like, it is all around that program. What's next? And what's next simply means what's the next thing in front of us. What just happened has no more control. There's nothing more that we can do in that situation. What's next? Whatever happened, happened. We're on to the next thing. And so for Nebraska, I think that's the attitude they have to have. I think they have a coach with a ton of composure and has a ton of experience in these kind of rebuilds. Like, Baylor, they struggled the first year under Matt Rhule. I believe his first game, or one of his first games at Baylor, was a loss to Liberty before Liberty was a team that was respectable to lose to. And everybody was talking about he wasn't the right guy, he's in over his head, Baylor's this, Baylor's that. A couple years later, they're playing for a Big 12 title. So I'm just saying, you look at Nebraska, you look at the final score, I think that's deceiving in regards to the progress they've made. I'm not here to make light of losing. I'm not here to make excuses for losing. Nobody's okay with what happened. Nobody, I promise you. Not the fan base, not that locker room, not the coaching staff. No one is saying that's a good thing. Got to be brutally honest. No such thing as a close loss that you're happy about. But you look at the tape, say there's good things to take away, we move forward. What's next? And I can't wait to see it, because what's next is Nebraska and Colorado. And that'll be a situation where you have two first-year head coaches at their respective programs. That'll be a really good litmus test, a really exciting data point, I think, to get on both Coach Prime and how this Nebraska team responds to a tough first outing. Regardless, though, keep it locked right here. We're going to talk about it all week next week. Subscribe. Can't wait to see y'all on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, live 11 a.m. Eastern. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at JD Piquel. Hey, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.